Hello, hello. Welcome. I'm your host, Valgan. I do Udon tutorials and development and standalone Unity stuff. Last week here, we did a breakdown on how to do kind of a visual fade teleport system. And people seem to really like that. I put up the resources for it on my Patreon, but most people would be able to watch through the tutorial and recreate it themselves on their end. There's a couple things that are slightly more difficult, like the shader that's needed for it. When I made the shader, it was only using Amplify, and Amplify is obviously not a free package. So the tools that I'm familiar with may not be the tools that everyone else are familiar with. I actually kind of struggled coming up with an idea for today. So while I've labeled it casual udon development, my idea for today is kind of working on a key item, like an item that you pick up, you move somewhere, you put it on a collider, like a door keyhole, and it triggers the door to do something. Just kind of a puzzle-like interaction that you can have. I've really liked making puzzle kit tools in the past, and I just don't like making games all that much. So the not making like making the actual gameplay design, the writing, the puzzle design, that's all less of the interesting part to me. I like making the tools for making puzzles for making games. So those never really ended up releasing or going anywhere big, but I can definitely do a more puzzle game oriented kind of tutorial series, especially in my streams here. And one of the things that I thought would be a good kind of starting ground for that would be just bringing a key to a door to open that door. I actually haven't prepped anything for this, so we're going to be making some models, we're going to be making our environment and everything. So let's just jump right into it. So let's have a scene here for item key, or key item, what should we call this? Key item, puzzle item. Hi, hello, welcome. Yeah, so just to recap, I'm thinking of doing kind of a set of puzzle tools as kind of a very basic introduction to making a game for VR chat. The idea today will be like a key that you bring up to a door to trigger something to happen. An interaction for bringing a held item to a designated place. And right now I'm just calling that item key, not the grandest of names, and I'm sure maybe we'll find a better one halfway through. But yeah, I think it'll be a kind of a good start for playing around and figuring out what the tooling for this could be. Let me just move this panel off screen here quick while I log into my account. I recently there we go. I recently had to restart my router, and that has logged me out from every VRChat Unity project I have. There we go. It just gave me an idea for having one door but multiple different keys, and depending on which one you use, the door brings you to a different place. Okay. Could use the Udon portal proof from... Yeah, okay. Yeah, that sounds cool. We'll be starting out with some basic stuff today for just getting an item that we bring up to it. But yeah, it could definitely have different output results for things that they can do. Honestly, it wouldn't even be that hard to do. It's easier in Udon Chart, but still doable in Udon Graph. Let's honestly just model our door and key here quick. So, open up Blender. My Blender scene defaultly has the Mixamo Xbot in it, so I can reference the height of characters. It's generally a good this is the tallest most players in VR chat get, but it's definitely not the absolute tallest. There's some very tall male furry bases that I've seen that can get pretty big. Alright, yeah, let's bring it in a little bit, but not too much. Doorways in video games have to be a little bit bigger than in real life. Alright, let's bring the pivot over here so it can rotate where the door actually is. Throw that over. Oh, Bob's your uncle. There we go. I think we should probably half the width on that, yeah. Or the depth for it. Do a slight bevel to the door. And we'll have a cube here. This will be a separate object and will be our actual lock that we have to put the key into. We'll do slightly bigger than the door itself. And we can get rid of the Xbox now. And lastly, we need our key. So let's scale it down to... what does a key look like? Just do this. Alright. I've successfully created the world's worst key. We will ignore how bad it is for the sake of everyone involved. But it will in fact be interpreted as a key by the viewers. That's you. Let's thin the key out. It's a little bit wide right now. Alright. Let's go ahead and parent everything correctly. Parent an object, parent this one. Rename this to door frame. Rename this to door. And this to key. And this to keyhole. Go ahead and make some materials for this. Oop. I think Blender has frozen up on me. Why did it freeze up on me when it has this horrible color? I haven't saved yet. Hopefully Blender hasn't just gone and crashed. It's probably just failing to calculate the preview for the material. There we go. Now it's done. Yeah, for some reason, my Blender installation really doesn't like calculating the preview for materials, especially the first time they're generated. Couldn't tell you why, but yeah. I could definitely do with that being less of a problem, but... Alright, we'll give that metal, we'll give the key metal, and we'll give the doorway wood. You will be a... that. Drop the saturation a little bit, bump up the roughness. Alright. Rotation, scale, and let's export this here. So, use my custom Unity preset. Doorway. Alright. Pop that in our scene here. Where's the VRC world? There it is. Let's fix the rotation here. There we go. So we basically need to move this key into this door, and then we'll have it just, I don't know, play an animation on the door. That seems easy enough. Or we could just have it set to the rotation of the door. Yeah, let's do that. Just as a really basic, hey, this is how this works kind of setup. All right. So we'll need a Udon Sharp script. So key trigger. So let's open this up and get started. The general idea is that this script is going to have on-trigger enter occur when you bring something into it, and it checks to see if that item is the actual item that you're trying to do stuff with. So zoom in a bit here. Tell Microsoft Defender to be happy. So we're going to go ahead and do Udon behavior sync mode none, because this doesn't need to be synced at all. It might make sense to sync it. Actually, yeah, let's go ahead and sync it. We'll have a public bool triggered. And this will be Udon synced. Actually, I'll ask the chat. What do you think of doing synced puzzles versus local puzzles? It might be, well, just as like part of this tooling, it might make more sense for more experiences to kind of be like synced, like, oh, or maybe even local. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Well, let's set up some variables here. So we'll have a serialized field for a private float open rotation. Now we'll need a transform reference for the door that we're going to open. Door root, or I guess just door is fine. And serialized field of private. Let's see. Well, we know it has to be a rigid body for this, so we'll just have it be a rigid body. Target key. So let's do on trigger enter. First of all, we don't want to do anything if we're already triggered, so if triggered, return. Now we want to make sure our collider is actually real, so if exclamation point utilities dot is valid other return. Actually, this is passing a collider, so I think the cheapest method will actually be, well, no, okay, yeah, we'll get the rigid body for it. So if utilities dot is valid other dot attached rigid body, there we go, turn. So if that's false, now we want to check to see if our attached rigid body is the same as our target key. Now there's a few ways that you can do that. You can compare them directly, but the cheapest way is actually to compare a instance ID. So we can actually just check if target key dot instance ID, get instance ID, equals other dot attached rigid body dot instance ID. And triggered equals true. Hello, welcome. What are we doing today? Yeah, so I played around with a few ideas, and we're just going to be doing a very basic key triggering system right now. The general idea has been kind of what's the kind of bare minimum thing that you could do for a game or an adventure world in VR chat? I just about said in Minecraft. But right now I've just set up a basic door and a key that you have to walk up with the key and hit the thing to open the door. So right now we're checking to see if it's triggered when we enter a trigger collider, and we skip it if not. We make sure it's real, make sure the rigid body's real, then we check to see if it's the one that we want. And if so, triggered equals true. Actually, what would be the best idea for this? I think it would be good to have a yeah, okay. We'll do this in on deserialization since we're syncing it. On deserialization. How do we want to check ownership? This should be pretty simple, fortunately. Yeah, okay. So let's just cache. No, we can do. Actually, yeah. Let's just do rigid body RB equals other dot attached rigid body. And using both spots there. We go ahead and it's real. We want to do okay, we need to cache the local player, so private VRC layer API local player. And in start, we'll do local player equals networking. Networking. There we go. Local player. And I will check if his local player is owner of rb.gameObject. And if not, return. Excuse me. So here, once we've triggered with the collider for the key, we can go ahead and do networking.setOwner local player game object. So that just declares ownership over this object so that we can sync properly. Triggered equals true, and we'll do request serialization and on deserialization. Request serialization just tells everyone else, hey, you should grab the newest code, well, the newest synced data. And on deserialization is the event that runs when players receive new networking data. And we're just kind of doing a little bit of a hack, calling it ourselves so that we can put all of our code right here. So once this is triggered, we don't actually need to do any of this ever again. Like the system is done. So we can actually do this dot enabled equals false. And that will shut down the game, the script on this, so we don't need to be doing anything more. But let's go ahead and do everything first. And we only care if triggered is true. So if triggered is false, return. So let's do door dot Euler angles equals new vector 3 0 open rotation 0. So what this is normally you can do door dot rotation, and that gives you a quaternion. But you can do Euler angles, sorry, not Euler angles, to set the X, Y, and Z rotations as opposed to the quaternion rotation, which is a bit stranger. But yeah, this should do basically exactly what we are looking for here. We can have a callback script, and we can add that later. But for right now, this should work, I think. Let's go find out. All right, so we are going to add the script to this object here. So key trigger. It needs to know door there. Door rotation needs to be, oh, what do we want? It'll be, yeah, let's just do, do we want to open in or out? I guess it's opening, let's actually adjust that. Doorway, 180. There we go. Now with the pivot, it'll make sense that it's opening like this. So we want it to open to minus 140. So good rotation. So let's go to our keyhole minus 140. And we want to tell it to use this key for its target rigid body. So we'll actually put a VRC pickup script on it, which automatically adds a rigid body. We'll set it to be kinematic. We don't want it to be flying around too much. We'll put a sphere collider on it. Just kind of a nice, safe collision option there. Wait, what's this? Oh? Oh? Did I miss this? Did I miss them introducing a version 1.1 for the VRC pickup component? What is this? Hold on. Note, I am on the 3.90 beta of the VRChat SDK. Oh, this is for the new grabbable, I believe. Is that it? I think it's the grab options. Proximity, orientation, there's a lot of theft. Okay, and I guess that's just a an internal setting when this is set, because I obviously don't see any settings here for how auto hold is used outside of that. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Neat. In that case, we can leave that like that. And we can add a VRC object sync to it. It's kinematic on remote, but it's kinematic anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But let's go ahead, go to our door here, set the rotation, just right click and hit revert. And realistically, we should just be able to grab this key here and have the door open when we shove it into the keyhole. So, moment of truth. Let's see if I've done anything wrong. Alright, key. Alright, it hasn't worked. Let's figure out what I did wrong. Oh, I never assigned it. Right. So we need to go to our keyhole and actually tell it to use this key. Alright. That should be it. Alright. Key acquired. Still didn't do anything. Alright. We're not getting any logs in our console. So let's see here. It's failing to set triggered. So let's see this step here. On trigger enter. We check to see if the other is valid. And if it's not valid, we return. Rigid body. Other attached rigid body. If the other attached rigid body isn't real, we return. We check to see if the local player is the owner. If they're not, we quit out. and then we check to see if the instance ID is the same as our rigid body instance ID, which should only be true in the scenario that we're actually interacting with this. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to use things like breakpoints in Udon, so I can't just click here and pause for that. So we're going to add some debug logging here to see which of these options is failing, because I'm obviously blind. Actually, wait. Nope. Haha! I figured it out. All of my code is correct. What we didn't do is put a collider on the actual door, the keyhole itself. So we're just swinging the key around and not actually hitting anything. Box collider. That must be trigger collider. Actually, while we're here, let's go ahead and put a box collider on the door and just a mesh collider on the frame. Some water. All right. Perfect. All right. It seems to have opened the wrong way, but let's see what actually it said here. So this is 40. I guess Euler angles are probably in world space then. By the way, isn't your mouse supposed to be moving a little bit more? Oh, did it break? Error, the face tracking process is gone. Please retry. Lol, okay. All right, let's give that a little reboot. I've never had VC Face just break before. Like, my camera's still running, and it just had an error pop up. Bonk. Come forth me again, but moving. There we go. All right, we're back at it. Thank you for letting me know. That is funny. All right. There is a local Euler angles. Okay, that makes sense. So I think that's the last thing that we need to do specifically to get the door working. Let's see here. Bonk. Schmovin'. Yeah. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, yeah, and that opens up perfectly fine. Cool. Let's look at the keyhole. That should disable the script. Okay, because that's no longer needed. Let's test some syncing. Since we can't actually do that in the editor, we are going to build and do some tests. So I'm gonna build and test 4 different versions. You'll have to excuse me while it sets up here. So I'm going to test largely 3 different scenarios. There's 2 players in the scene. 1 player grabs the pickup and puts it into the key. It should open it for both of those players. And then the 3rd player... Oh, crap. Alright. Seems to try to just launch VR there. I forgot to click the force non-VR button. I guess you are getting the VR chat audio capture. Here, I've got that disabled here. That should make it a bit easier. Alright, force non-VR. Test your last build. Clients 3. Test last build. Alright. Get all these things popped up. bonk, bonk, and bonk. Let's see here. So I need to swap to display capture. There we go. All right. So I'm gonna have these two load in. The player on the right is the instance owner. So for testing everything for sex, we're just gonna have the person over here grab it. So they have grabbed the key. They are waving around. We should be able to trigger that. All right, so that triggered immediately. I think the issue we're seeing here is the local player disables the script before they can successfully send out networking data. So we may have to give that a 1 frame delay on turning the game object off. So we'll have a public void disable script. This dot enabled equals false. Oh, thank you so much for the tutorials. You helped me get started with Unity as well as learn a few new things. Keep up the good work. Yeah, thank you. Happy to have you. Today we're actually doing a bit of a tutorial as well. A lot of my streams haven't been, but these last two have been. The idea today is that we're kind of interacting with a key object system. There's a door that we're ramming a key into and doing this stuff. Why would you disable the script in the first place? Well, if it's a script that's going to do things further down the line, then it would make sense to leave it enabled. But since this is a one-time triggering action, I think it makes sense to shut off the script so it's not broadcasting extra data, it's not doing more things. But there's always a chance that it might just make sense to not disable it. Honestly, we already have our triggered checks in here, so yeah, it might make sense to just not disable it, especially given how VRC networking isn't huge on the idea of disabling scripted Udon scripts and the likes. So yeah, might just be for the best. I don't care about having a public version of that, so just set that to be there. I'll actually just move that over so these are lined up, just for slight organization. And the last thing we care about, honestly, is getting rid of the key once you have used it. So, let's see, how do we want to do this? We want to be able to turn off the game object once it is properly triggered, but we also want to tell the player to drop the game object for so if you disable a game object that someone is holding, that doesn't actually make them drop the object. This ends up with a lot of miscommunication over what's happening, because the player can try to click on things with a hand and can't do that because they're still holding an object that's just invisible and they haven't like clicked the button to drop it. If you want to disable the script, do it on post serialization event rather than on a time delay. Well, the reason I am hesitant on doing that is because we want to disable the script for receivers as well. So we would want to be doing it for, let's say player 2 is receiving the data and they need to shut down the script as well. If I disable it on post serialization, then that disables it for me, but not for any of the receivers. The receivers would have to do it on deserialization. But the way I'm handling this right now is on deserialization is where we actually set our rotation and everything. So that's why I'm calling it down here, which is why it was happening on the same frame. So there's some options. There's some things that you can do for it. This is probably the smartest one in the long run. is just to not disable it. I swear, I'm not frowning constantly, but my thing really wants to frown today. Maybe I just have to really aggressively smile. I've tried resetting it a few times, but I guess it just thinks I'm grumpy today. Alright, so we want to disable the game object, but also make the player drop it. We don't preemptively have a reference to the pickup, but I don't think pickups have a preemptive reference for a rigid body. Let's actually just check that. VRC pickup, target pickup. Do pickups have a rigid body? No, they do not have a public rigid body reference. Okay. So I think we'll just assert that there is a pickup on this. So VRC pickup equals target key dot transform dot get component VRC pickup, and if the pickup is real, we'll do pickup dot drop local player, just to make sure that you've successfully rid yourself of it. Honestly, we don't need to do this in on-deserialization either. We can just do this in here, because we know for a fact that you are the owner of the object that is being interacted with. And obviously only the owner of the object can drop it, because two people can't... It's your thinking face. Oh. I guess that makes sense. Still have yet to learn Uno Sharp. I'm hoping sometime soon I can find the time and motivation to. Honestly, just find some really stupid project that is just ridiculous and silly, and use that as your learning process. It's always great to have a really dumb project that you allow to fail to kind of help you learn doing things. One of the big ones for me early on was I was doing a lot of Portal stuff in VR chat, like things from the game Portal and Portal 2. And one of the first big things that I did actually were faith plates, just kind of the thing you step onto and it launches you off into the distance. And it was just an absolute nut show getting that to work at the time, especially because it was like month 2 of Udon existing. And there were a lot more limitations than we have now. For example, if you wanted to set the player's velocity, like say you wanted them to fly off into the air, they had to be airborne beforehand. So you had two options. One, you could either teleport them immediately above the ground and then set their velocity, or what I did, your launch pad doesn't have a collider, and there's a hole underneath it. So when you stepped over it to launch yourself off into the air, you're actually, for one frame, falling into the faith plate before you could actually launch off and have it work. It was absolutely horrendously stupid, but it was wonderful. I absolutely loved it. Here, let me swap to standing mode here. I've been seated this whole time and it's not great for the back. I have a desk chair here that I really like, but it's not exactly new. It's still held together pretty well, but the big issue is all of the grip on the actual seat itself has smoothed off. So it becomes really easy for me to just start sliding down and suddenly I have scoliosis. So I'm hoping to not have scoliosis. Alright, force the player to drop it. We need to disable it up here. So we'll do target key.gameObject.set active false. Let's head back over into Unity for once. All right, hit play. And the key should properly disable when I hit the keyhole with it. Success. All right. Let's do a build and test for them. All right. Build and test your world. Build and test. All right. So we've got the first two versions up here. Go. Person on the right holding the key. Person on the left sees that. Hit the door. The door opens for both players. The key disappears for both players. And the third player should be able to join the instance and see this door open. Eventually. Perfect. Awesome. So that is correctly syncing over. Wonderful. Beyond that, we can have some callback events and stuff that we can do there. So let's just set that up quick. One of the most powerful things about using Udon, specifically in VR chat, is you can have an arbitrary kind of trigger callback system. So let's say I wanted to have another script play a sound effect when you when you have the trigger happen. We can actually do a lot of things for that. So let's have a serialized field for a private Udon behavior callback target, and let's actually give this a header for callbacks, and I have a serialized field of private string callback event. And we'll have a bool for yeah, we'll have a serialized field for private bool owner only. So if it's the owner only, like we're expecting it to be some kind of synced thing, we'll run it in here. But if it's not, like it's just playing a sound effect or something, we'll put it on deserialization. So callback for owner only. That's a more descriptive name. All right, if callback for owner only, if callback for owner only and callback target, so just to make sure it's real, we'll do callback target dot send custom event callback event. Why not make the callback variable an Udon behavior away? Oh my god. My eyes read ahead and read might as well, so it turned Udon behavior array into away. Yeah, we can absolutely do that. That's one of the things that it's a little bit weird to look at in the editor, so you might want some custom editors for that. We can actually do that as part of the rest of the stream here, but I'll show you how I prefer to do that kind of stuff here. So actually, let's close all these VR chat instances. Be gone. All right. Well, we have our callback. We actually need to. Oh, right. I need to finish this. We need to put this whole thing here, but invert callback for owner only. All right. We need an actual target, so we're probably going to have just one of the default scripts that toggles something on. So let's just have a. Let's just have some mans. All right. 180. We'll just have him right behind here. So snapping, don't just have them right behind the door. Off by default, and we'll give them a parent toggle. So we'll just use a interact toggle, which is one of the default stuff. I just typically do that even if I think I'll never need it, because adding in the future would just break all the previous script instances. Yeah, fair. One of the things that I don't like about doing that in normal Udon is you always want a target script and a target string name for the event. Unfortunately, that kind of creates a disconnect because we don't actually have structs in Unity, or in Udon, sorry. Which would make that a lot easier. So how I end up doing that a lot of times is I used to do custom inspectors that would do a lot of the kind of fake structs, but in reality, I found that just making a helper script with a real struct is the easiest and most clear to the end user. So I'll actually show you here in a bit how I like doing that. All right, so interact toggle. This just goes off of the interact event. So we'll have our door key, have this as the callback, and do underscore interact. Let's check here to see if that's actually how this works. So bonk. All right, that didn't work. I wonder if interact doesn't have a capital I for it. So underscore interact. All right, yeah, that was it. All right, so we have our callback function there. Now, in order to do what, is it Crazy Boys? Am I supposed to pronounce the J? Krajsi? Or what? Well, Boys' suggestion is having a bunch of options for calling back from things. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to have a few things. Yes, Crazy Boys. Okay. Sure. So I'm going to have two things here. Okay. One of the downsides of doing that method, which honestly is the correct one, is that Udon behavior array isn't real. Udon behavior array is not a thing that's exposed to Udon, unfortunately. So that does limit us just to Udon sharp, or we could do Unity engine.object and just cast it every time. But I don't really like casting as much if it's not necessary. So we're just going to unfortunately limit this to Udon sharp behavior. Now, for the most part, if you're having a complex callback system for your stuff, you're probably going to be calling Udon sharp behaviors to begin with. It is just an unfortunate limitation of these events, of this implementation. All right. So we'll do for int I callback targets.length and dry this up. Callback targets I will send callback events I. And now we need to assert that this will always be correct. I should just put this here. That. Now, what I was mentioning earlier, where they kind of get visually disconnected. Let's say we have 10 different callbacks for these. So let's do 10 and 10. Now we need to remember that element 9 here takes the event name from element 9. But we can fortunately just make a helper script for that. So let's go ahead and make a new C# script called key trigger helper. And this is basically going to do the heavy lifting of making that actually usable. So we're going to get rid of the unnecessary stuff there. We'll have a public. Oop, okay. It needs to think a little bit. There we go. Public struct udon event, and this will have a public udon sharp behavior target and a public string event. Then we'll have a public list of udon event callback events. And lastly, we need to give this the serializable attribute so that it can actually show up in the inspector. Now, for the big one that I've recently learned about, it's been a few months, but relatively speaking, I've recently learned about this, is onValidate. The onValidate function runs whenever something changes on the inspector while we are looking at this script. So we can actually just say, so we'll need our key trigger to require component type of key trigger helper. And since this is outside of the udon script itself, we don't care about it not being exposed to udon. We can just assert that there is a key trigger on this object. Script equals get component key trigger. And if it's not there, we can just say if script isn't real, return. So what we're going to do is populate callback targets and callback events. So let's set these both to be public, but we're going to I won't hide them in the inspector just yet because it'll be easier to show it later when we actually pump the data over to it. So as well as callback events, we'll have a public rule callback for owner only. There we go. So since we have an udon sharp array over here and a string array, we need to build those out from our list of udon events. So let's have a udon sharp behavior array targets to equal callback events length or count. Well, okay, but the new udon sharp array of that count. There we go. Move that out from behind my head. We'll do the same thing, but for strings events. Now we're going to for each our callback events. Callback. Actually, instead of doing arrays here, it'll be we could do arrays, but I like doing lists for this. So let's just go ahead, bonk, do a list there. I'm very good at making people do a lot more work than first intent. No worries, no worries. Hey, there's a lot of you people in my chats coming here with their good ideas and whatnot. New list of behavior. Then a new list of string. Alright, targets.add callback.target and events.add, oops, not final, add callback.event. Now we're going to do a few editor only things. So let's actually get some wrapping up for if Unity editor. There we go. So we'll have a script dot callback targets equals targets dot to array and script dot callback events equals target. Nope. Events to array. And right before that, we'll do script dot callback for owner only equals callback for owner only. But since we want this to be part of the undo stack, we're going to have to do undo dot record object. It'll be script. If Unity will, if Rider will do, there we go. Script assigned callback values. All right, this undo record object here is why we needed the if Unity editor define, because that is only available when you're using Unity editor scripts, because obviously there is no undo option for setting variables at runtime for Unity. But we need to set it up here as well, because we have the usings up here for the Unity editor. This is where we actually get this from. All right, so now let's go into Unity here. We should be able to just click on our keyhole right over here. There we go. Now, it isn't on here yet, so if I just remove the component and then paste a new one, you see it automatically adds this key trigger helper. So let's have a callback. Let's have this one, which you see it immediately populated an empty value here. We'll do this and then set it to underscore interact. There we go. So that populates both of these arrays down here without us needing to remember, like, oh, I've edited this one or I've reordered this. Let's go fix all this. So let's just call some other fake event. So my fake event. You'll see if I reorder this here, it completely fixes the ordering there. And if I hit undo, it all goes back to how it was. So now this should work exactly like it did before. So let's enter play mode. Grab the key, put it in, bonk, and the dude turns on. There we go. So the last thing that we kind of want to do here is destroy the key trigger helper. Now, the reason we want to do that is it's not really necessary, but this script isn't something that gets uploaded to VRChat. And because of that, VRChat doesn't have an idea of what key trigger helper is. It just sees that there's a missing script here. So whenever you load into this world, you'll get a bunch of error or warning logs saying, hey, you've got missing scripts in your scene. So there's a bunch of problems that can just show up if you're wanting kind of a clean log for that. It's not strictly necessary to do this, but it's on the nicer side of things that you can do. So we're going to have a function here. So under here we'll have it be part of the Unity editor define as well. We're going to have a public static void on post process. So what we're doing here is we are going to use an attribute called post process scene. I'll give it a -10. Now, a static function gets called once for all of them. This is independent from the instance of the key trigger helper, which for most of the script is just a component that sits on something. But this is just an asserted piece of code that's just like, I can do something, but it's just completely unrelated to there being a component in the scene. Post-process scene is an attribute that you can put on a static function to just say, run this when building the scene. So post-process scene, it has built out the scene file from the package, and it allows you to go through and edit things in it. This works both when you're going into play mode or when you're running a build. So when you're hitting the build and test. So what we can do here is we can actually just find all the instances of this. So key trigger helper array helpers equals find objects by type, key trigger helper. This will be, no, we want to include inactive ones, and I don't care about the sort, so just put that to be none. I'll hit enter here at the bottom so we can scroll this above my head a bit better. Now, we need to destroy each one of these. Now, there's a couple ways we can do that. If you just call destroy, here, let's just do for each helper, oops, helper, there we go. If you just call destroy on the helper, this would work under normal circumstances, but it's able to register that require component up here is what's forcing this script to be on this game object. So it doesn't actually destroy it. What I don't know is if destroy immediate works. It might, so we're going to check that out here. That's something I actually didn't know. Yeah. One of the things I failed to mention is post-process scene here gives you a callback order. So if you have other post-process scenes, you can give it a negative number to go before some of them or a positive to go after. For Udon and VR chat, always give it a negative value. Doesn't matter what it is. Could be -1, could be -1 million. Whatever it is, it just needs to be negative. This is because Udon builds up all of its references for its components and stuff during post-process scene 0. So if you want to make any edits or changes to your Udon behaviors before that, you have to do it with a negative value. So this attribute allows you to not put in a number. You just need to remember that it has to have a number there. All right, now let's find out if destroy immediate actually removes things that require a component on them. There's a solid chance that it just doesn't, and we'll have to change up how we're doing this, but that's perfectly fine. So we'll hit play mode and see if this helper component disappears. Nope, it did not. I cannot destroy immediate because it is required. All right, so in that case, instead of doing a require component up here, we're going to do the same thing we did here actually by having a editor only on validate. So let's do this. Have a end if, so get out of that. And we want to check to see if there's a key trigger helper. Since we're going to be doing things in an Udon script that aren't exposed to Udon, we need to also do if a Unity editor and not compiler Udon sharp. That's the important one. So if there is no helper, we will do no, that needs to be on GameObject.add component. There we go. Key trigger helper. There we go. Did you turn down the music? It feels a bit quieter compared to your voice. I did turn it down a little bit. In the previous stream, I noticed that it was a little bit on the louder side, but I can notch it back up here if you'd like. Let's do -9 decibels. It was at -12. So let me know how it's feeling on your side. But yeah, that should work. All right, so we no longer have a require component. We just have a fake require component over here in on validate. Sounds pretty good. I think the music was at a good volume. All right, well, I'll let y'all fight amongst yourselves for it. All right, now let's enter play mode again and see what happens. All right, it successfully destroyed it, but I think we know what's about to happen. If I click that, yep, all right, we got another one added. So we don't want to run this if we're in play mode. So if application.isPlaying return. So this basically just says if the Unity application, even a built one, is actively running, don't run this function. Which should be all we need for that. All right. I think it still works. Bada bing, bada boom. All right. And it doesn't have the component, and there is no longer a component on here. Nice. With that, we can actually go ahead and... Is application.isPlaying true even when paused? Yes. That does appear to be the case. I understand why you might ask that though, because especially there is a application.isPaused. Oh, is it not? Oh no. So there isn't application.paused. There is editor application.isPaused. There we go. The game, the baked game of Unity, when you've outputted a build, doesn't have an idea of being paused. That being paused is exclusively a editor idea for that, which is why it's not in the application. It's just an editor application. Yeah, so now that we don't need a visible version of these, we can actually just go ahead and do hide in inspector and hide these three variables. Okay, now we don't have those visible anymore. I should move it a little bit. So we just have the whether or not it's triggered. We have the open rotation, the door, the target key. Whether or not it's triggered, we don't really want someone to go clicking this, because if it's clicked and you enter play mode, it's not going to act correctly. This is because if you're an owner of it, you don't receive on-deserialization for it. So it's just not going to do anything. So we don't actually want someone editing that, but it's good to see that it's visually triggered. So let's have a... what would be a good solution for that? Honestly, we could probably just leave it as is. Yeah. Don't need to kick stuff around too much. It's working how it is now. Alright. Well, we're a little over halfway done with the stream. One thing that I guess I can show off, since the idea of this is for kind of puzzle games in general, is using inheritance for a tool like this. So right now we've built out very specifically a key trigger. It's just, it has a lot of things that can be genericized into an actual puzzle game. You move an object into a trigger and it does a callback. So what we're actually going to do here, I'm going to rename this to be pickup trigger. And let's go back into Unity. We're going to rename our key trigger asset here once Unity's done figuring itself out. Come on, there we go. Bonk, bonk. Then our key trigger helper can actually be renamed to Udon Fallback Helper. This is because we're actually going to strip a lot of stuff out of this script. So let's head back to Unity, and we're going to make a new file. Let's see here. Actually, I think just calling this a... yeah, callback helper is fine. So we'll have a new C# script. Udon callback base. Now, we do want this to be an Udon sharp behavior, but I specifically made a C# behavior so that it doesn't generate the what's it called? The Udon sharp program asset. The second file that comes with those things. So what we're actually going to do is make this abstract. So that means this isn't real. Like, this isn't a component that you can add onto something. It's just something you can inherit from. For those who aren't familiar, inheritance is basically how C# works with its classes. You see we have our pickup trigger over here, and that is a Udon sharp behavior. And an Udon sharp behavior is a mono behavior. And a mono behavior is a behavior, and so on and so forth. It's just infinite turtles or whatever it's called. But we can make use of that for Udon because the Udon sharp compiler just figures it out. So we're going to go ahead and move these over here, our callback and that stuff. And we're going to move this as well. So this is our helper handling. This is our callbacks and stuff. And we can instead just copy Udon callback base and put that into Udon sharp behavior. So now our pickup trigger has all of the same stuff, except we can have other scripts that aren't just pickup triggers. It could be buttons or something that inherit from Udon callback base and just do all of this as well. I think I'll probably add a event for this. So yeah, okay. We'll have a public void. No, let's do a protected. No, let's do public. Public void trigger callback. And we'll just put the loop in here. And we'll give it a little bit of protection in case something broke. So we'll do if that's real, run the callback. So instead of doing this, we do callback for owner only. We can just call trigger callback. And move it down here as well. Let Unity figure stuff out. Now, you should see, nothing's changed. We have all of the same events, we have all of the same references, and everything works exactly the same, but all of the parts that were handled for the Udon callbacks are just in a inherited part, so we can make other things that can do that stuff. Okay, so I broke something here. Let's figure that out. Key, origin body. Actually, why didn't that work? Okay, well, if that's real, send the event, callbacks on that, public. Oh, I think I know why. So, since we copied that over, I believe there was a one-time issue for onValidate. So onValidate runs when something in your inspector changes, not when something is made visible or like enabled. So I think this backing data isn't copied over from the previous version. Fortunately, we could just double click that button and that should do it, because that changed the inspector's values at all. Oh, you're right. Nope, you're right. I forgot to undo that thing. You kept the trigger bool active in the editor. Remember how I said this would cause an issue for no one and it immediately caused an issue for me? Yeah, okay. Alright. There we go. Now no one can ever press that button again. I cannot believe I so confidently stated that it would never be a problem. And then immediately it happens for me. Make it be false on start, maybe. Well, no, because then we'll have to do a syncing, an ownership check and only set it for the owner. Because if it is triggered for remote players, then yeah, no. I think this is our best option. Yeah. Anyway, so that works again. Let's have a secondary thing so we can show off the kind of usefulness of having this kind of inheritance. So we'll have a, instead of a pickup trigger, we'll have a an interact trigger. This will be very quick. This is basically just going to be an incredibly simple thing. If Unity will compile the new script and let me do stuff. There we go. All right, we're not going to have that. We are going to inherit from Udon callback helper and type in interact. And grab the on interact. No, it's just interact. Where's the autofill for it? Am I blind? Public override void interact. Am I doing something wrong? Oh, Udon callback helper. That's not what I want. I want Udon callback base. There we go. Udon callback base. That's the actual one. I'll rename this to Udon callback editor helper so that it keeps me from not doing that. It keeps me from doing that. There we go. So in interact, we'll just call trigger. Trigger callback. And since this is synced, we can actually just go ahead and move callback base up here. Actually, no. Yeah, okay. We'll have this one be synced, and we'll have this one not be synced. So this can just be a local talk. Let's get the classic host cube. So we get our interact trigger on here. You see it has the same callback helper on here. So we'll just actually, honestly, just kind of copy the whole thing. So let's go to our keyhole, copy the editor helper, paste values, and this should do exactly the same thing. It should locally toggle the thing on and off. Boom. And it did nothing. Why has this done nothing? Does pasting values not trigger a onValidate? Huh. I guess it probably doesn't. No? Is that not the issue? Man, I really expected all this to be incredibly easy. What's going on here? How about an enum drop down in the inspector to pick and choose who receives the events? Local, owner, all but local, etc. You could do that. I think for the most part, a lot of this is going to be use case dependent. Let's say, like for example, the callback helper here is just local. It just has an idea of who the callbacks are for. And I guess it does have this bool here for callback for owner only. So I guess that's fair. The problem is I think that should be handled more on the side of the individual scripts rather than the inherited thing. To determine that. Because, for example, I think a non-synced on behavior literally can't send a custom network event. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it is taken out of the networking stack for that. I just like making my scripts way too long. Well, that's the thing. I think it wouldn't help. I think that's the kind of thing that individual implementations would want to handle, and it would largely just be bloat otherwise. I know, an unsynced behavior does not send events. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so call like this. Okay, so this is still casting a pickup trigger, which is probably why we're having the issue. We want an udon callback base. Okay, that's why our trigger wasn't actually working. Because we didn't update to our base class here in the onValidate. And then this can go back to being serialized field, since callback for owner only is just for this script. And interact trigger here is just entirely local. Oh, there we go. Toggling on and off. And he should disappear when I open the door. Perfect. All right. So that's the general gist of a trigger system. There's a lot that we can kind of expand this out to for more proper puzzle games, be it like something like Portal, where you have a cube that goes down onto a box, a button, or if you have just like keys in a mansion that you're going around, kind of a horror experience. A lot of them are built on the same kind of groundwork of tools. So I think this might actually be kind of cool to play around with for a general thing. Not that I need another project, but I think this is something that people would really enjoy. Especially since it's pretty structurally sound to just add a few more things and then, oh look, it's just done by the end of stream. It's something I find incredibly easy to do, and it's not at all time consuming. Or not extensively time consuming. But yeah. Let's close that out. Quick prototype assets, my beloved. Yes. I think changing this from pickup trigger to just be called the rigid body trigger would make sense. pickup trigger almost sounds like it triggers when you pick something up rather than when a pickup hits it. And since the pickup isn't even required, we could just have it be a rigid body. One of the limitations of this specific system, and kind of specifically built into it, is that you have to use a very specific udon like object in order to open it. So if you have another key somewhere else, this key won't open that lock. It has to be this key. So if you have like a button that you have to put a cube on, it doesn't matter which one, then this system wouldn't work for that. But some slight changes would really like kind of get around that. And largely it would be a kind of tagging system. Which might honestly be something we can complete here. Sure. I feel like I just changed it. Right. I need to change pickup trigger, the Udon Sharp behavior asset, Udon Sharp program asset. That's it. I need to rename that. Now let's have a object tag trigger and another script just called object tag. Whenever you're ready, Unity. There we go. Okay, so our object tag trigger is honestly going to take a lot from the rigid body trigger. So I'll copy manual. And we actually won't have any visuals for it. So yeah, okay. We'll have the Udon sync there. Player. I don't think we care about ownership of the object that hits it, just the one that for it. Okay, yeah, that should work. Just start there. Okay. So one of the things here that we're going to start seeing is if you have something with two states, be it an object that is placed on a button, opens the door, and taking it off closes the door, for example, now you have two different callbacks that you need to do. So our callback helper here is only expecting to send one. So I think it might make sense to, instead of having Udon callback base, we'll have a second one that's basically the same thing, but with two of it. And it'll be like Udon callback state toggle, Udon callback, Udon state callback. No. Let's do Udon callback toggle base. There we go. Oh, I didn't need the thing for that. Come on, Unity. I believe in you. Compile. There we go. We're going to largely have the same things. But enabled callback base and enabled callback events. Target. And oops. Disabled callback targets and events. All right. And trigger callback basically be the same thing, except we'll take a bool enabled. Enable. Okay. We'll just call it value. And we'll do if value. Put this there. Else, we will do the same thing. Except for every callback, we're going to do enabled callback. And down here, inversely, oops, I'm going to do disabled callback. For some formatting. Alright, now we'll be copying over the onValidate, but we'll be having an udon callback event editor helper, but that'll be an udon callback toggle editor helper. I swear it's not getting confusing. Udon callback toggle editor helper. I'm more than happy to have long names for things if it is equally descriptive. Copy this up here. Alright. You need to finish compiling? There we go. Alright, so udon event right now is just part of this. So let's actually give this a namespace. So namespace Falcon puzzle kit. Sure. Oh, right. This is the one I put all the empty spaces at the bottom. And we're just going to do that for all of our scripts here. It's much better to have a long name than a short one, because it's only a matter of time before you forget what all the random letters mean. Absolutely. Is it annoying to read sometimes? Yes. Do I think that it really matters? No, because you'll just read it. Alright, now we need to move udon event out, which is one of the reasons why I just did the namespacing. So I can actually grab that and I just pop it right here. So now this struct isn't just a part of the udon callback editor helper script, it's just part of the puzzle kit. So now, just need to import the rest of the missing things. And now, we don't care about udon callback base. We're call about udon callback toggle base. We'll have enabled events and disabled events. This will be enabled targets. This will be enabled events. Duplicate that. This. Swap that and swap that. Now we can go to our scripts, enabled targets, enabled events, duplicate, Come on. Disabled. Disabled. All right. So that should copy everything over correctly. Post-processing, this needs to be changed over to toggle. There we go. And I don't think anything else needs to change. All right. Now we'll actually probably need a real example. So let's go ahead and go to our object tag trigger. Object tag trigger will inherit from our udon callback toggle base. That needs to be in our puzzle kit. Where did I put the rigid body trigger? There it is. All right. So let's just take all of this, put that here. We don't care about rigid bodies at the moment. So we do care about having this though. Add that. Callback trigger. There it is. Triggered. Let's see. All right, here is where we care about getting stuff. We no longer care about rigid bodies. What we instead want is to go off of the attached rigid body, because a rigid body is going to be moving around. Something equally as important as class and variable names are to organize your files. Yes. I tend to be very organized in my actual file structure. One of my big ones is just having too many script tabs open. That's the big one that I keep tripping over. It's like, oh my god, where on earth is this? Alright, so we want to get a specific tag. So let's do object tag equals other dot attach rigid body dot get component object tag. I'll just call this obj tag object tag. So that's not complaining. Because if I just call it tag is the name of a variable built into a mono behavior, so it'll panic if that happens. All right, up here we'll have a string for trigger tag, and this is what we'll compare against. So if object tag is not real, we'll do that. So if object tag dot tag no. Did I not make that public? Oh, I didn't make anything. This isn't a real script yet. Public string tag. Put on behavior sync mode. None. All right. If string dot equals, yeah. Trigger tag and object tag dot tag with a capital T. Then put this here, get rid of that, and remove. Also don't need that anymore. All right, it's a lot leaner, but we will need another function. will be on trigger exit, which will basically be exactly the same thing, except we invert the value in both spots to false. Let's quickly whip up something for this. Design very original, nondescript portal button. Oh crap! Did I say portal? I meant whatever. All right. Button. Should you not make it its own function instead of having a lot of duplicate code? This is a lot of it is similar, but there's enough small ones that, because there's this and there's checking to see if this is true versus false. I think since these two I guess I could shorten it down. It feels like this isn't a whole lot that we need to, but I guess we technically could. Private void check for tag provider other, sure. Yeah, so we'll basically be having two things. Private void set trigger, set triggered, pool value. I think we should probably move where the ownership handle is being done. Let's see here. Okay, let's just go ahead and move this over. It's supposed to be more of a yes or no question. Oh, yeah. Just largely the part that we can mirror is this, and then this separately. If check for tag other set triggered true. Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, I kind of didn't want to put in the work for that, but I couldn't justify not doing it. Just do it that way. Check tag, set trigger. So this is going to happen. I think we just want this to run for the already existing owner. So if local player dot is owner game object turn exclamation point. Don't know. All right, this should be fine. Let's see here. We're probably actually gonna need a way to know the resulting value of this. So just for now, of a serialized field private game object demo target. Demo target dot set active triggered. I've named it in full caps in the hopes that I remembered to not have it eventually. Alright, buttons. This will have a child, that's our actual trigger volume. Can be height of 0.1, offset by 0.25. 1.5 seems to be about where I got it. Yeah, this is good for now. And this will have our object tag trigger. Box. And let's have another cube named box. That has our object tag for box. And we'll have a second one that's just fake box. Put a VRC pickup on both of them and make them synced. So this will be targeting another cube that's right here for toggling on and off. Let's make this just like that, yeah. We don't need all the other things. This will just be the target of our nonsense. Triggered identifier. Alright, let's go to this. Drag in our identifier there. So now these two have our tags. And let's see if that works. Verify everything else still works. Perfect. I'm noticing a distinct lack of anything happening. Cute. Tight trigger. Why would that have... check for tag. Make sure the tag is real. String.compare return. Why does that return an int? Oh, the first substring follows the second substring in the search order. The substring occurs in the same position. Okay. So we're still looking for equals. Do invariant culture ignore case. Component object tag attached rigid body. We also care about there being an attached rigid body. Oh, is there anything basic and simple that I've screwed up? Let's see. This is an object tag, default layer, box collider, rigid body. This trigger volume here. Box collider does not have a rigid body, but that has a rigid body. Looking for trigger tag box, trigger identifier. Actually, I'm curious. Our object tag trigger. Toggle base. Okay, well, we're still missing the on validate for the other thing, but that's not the issue. This shouldn't be the issue. Trigger callback. Yeah, it just loops through that. Press serialization on deserialization. Oh, okay. We were canceling out of it if it was false, which we don't want to do. So it might have actually been working, but we only saw it when it was enabled. Okay, so let's get our things here. Actually, we don't need to put anything in here for this test, since our demo box is doing all the toggling. It still isn't working though. Well, let's start logging and figure out where it's going wrong. So let's go back to our on tag trigger. This is on trigger enter. Yeah, we don't want to run on trigger enter if it's triggered. We don't want to run on trigger exit if it's not triggered. Oh crap. I misread before. On deserialization in rigid body trigger cares about it being triggered. On On deserialization and object tag trigger wants it to not care about that. Okay. Alright. This is supposed to be when I'm ending the stream. So that means this is going to work right now, this time, for real. I am sure of it. I have incredible confidence that this is going to work exactly as I hope it will. Let's scale these down so they're easier to carry. And just put a mesh collider on this thing. Alright, play. Now everything should magically work exactly the way that I want it to. And I can go have some supper. Awesome. Perfect. It is in fact doing that. And it shouldn't do that with this one. Awesome, because this one is fake box, while this one is real box. Ta-da! Oh my god, it works! We've done it! Alright. I think that is a wonderful place to stop off, where everything's actually working. Honestly, this has been pretty fun. I haven't played with puzzle game tooling in Udon in quite a while. One of my big reasons I stopped working on it was just I didn't have a personal use for it. But if people are interested in this kind of thing, then absolutely, I'd love to have this up on my Patreon and have people diving into it, finding problems and finding things that they want more of. But yeah, it was great seeing everyone this week. Yeah, we are right here at the end of the hour. So, yeah, I might end up doing a bit more of this next week. I'm curious if people have any, like, kind of tutorials or things they're working on that they'd like a bit more information on that we can possibly cover over in these streams. Like I said, we went over and did a bunch of this, but I basically treat everything that I do in these videos, at least when I'm succeeding at it, as a tutorial. So I go through every action that I'm doing, I'm explaining everything, and basically treating it as like a teaching thing. So if people have any interest in things they want to hear about, feel free to let me know in the Discord server. And until next week, thanks for being here, and we'll see you around.